1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 12 through 26. Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Now it was a practice of the priests that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant will come with a 3-pronged fork in his hand while the meat was being boiled, and would plunge the fork into the pan, or kettle, or cauldron, or pot. Whatever the fork brought up, the priest will take for himself. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servants will come and say to the person who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." And the person said to him, "Let the fat be burned first, and then take whatever you want." The servant will answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force." This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman to take the place of the ones you prayed for and gave to the Lord." Then they would go home. And the Lord was gracious to Hannah. She gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they slept with a woman who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, the report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good. If one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them?" His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. And the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. Now a man of God came to Eli and said to him, "This is what the Lord says. Did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under Pharaoh? I chose your ancestor out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest and to go up to my altar, to burn incense and to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your ancestors' family all the food offerings presented by the Israelites. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering that I prescribed for my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me, by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel? Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that members of your family will minister before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me. Those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained. This time, the time is coming when I will cut short your strength and strength of your priestly house, so that no one in it will reach old age, and you will see distress in my dwelling. Although good will be done to Israel, no one in your family line will ever reach old age. Every one of you that I do not cut off from serving at my altar, I will spare only to destroy your sight and sap your strength, and all your descendants will die in the prime of life. And what happens to your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be assigned to you. They will both die on the same day. I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who will do according to what is in my heart and mind. I will firmly establish his priestly house, and they will minister before my anointed one always. Then everyone left in your family line will come and bow down before him for a piece of silver and a loaf of bread and plead, appoint me to some priestly office so that I can have food to eat.
Thank you so much, Tunde. So scene 1 was this little boy in the temple. Scene 2 is a scene of abuse. That should come up on the screen. That's pictures of boiling meat, in case you can't work out what it is. So at this stage in history, God's people lived in one place, a country, and God, perfectly holy and pure, had set up a system through these people, the priests, to relate to him. So one of the ways that normal, faithful people expressed their honouring of God was by bringing the first and best of what they had to him. What a beautiful and holy and precious God-honouring thing. That God, utterly different from them in every day, is welcoming people to him. And people could express that with whatever they had. But there was an instruction in the law that when they brought the meat, the fat should be burnt off first to sort of give an illustration that the best is going to God. And then the priests who ran the temple can take the rest to eat. So everybody's provided for, but God is honoured. But do you see what these two were doing, Hophni and Phinehas? They were saying, no. We don't want your boiled meat. We don't want God's seconds, thank you. We want it before that. And you see how wicked that is? They were stopping these poor people, they didn't have much, who really came to the temple wanting to honour God. They were stopping them from giving God the best they could by taking it for themselves. I think the way the story goes, it's actually even worse than that, because they didn't even do it themselves. Did you notice that as the story was read? They sent a servant to go and claim this offering illicitly. That's always the way of the coward. Corrupt people. Have you ever had that? Ever experienced an institution that seems totally corrupt? You can never get to speak to the person who's actually responsible for the bad decision. You're not allowed to get there. Their servants just keep being sent out to do what's bad. And did you see as well, this person trying to do the right thing, what God's law said, in the end they get threatened with violence. Threatened with violence by someone they trusted to bring them to God. There have been horrific cases of abuse in the church globally. And this is the pattern that people have experienced. Victims head in, trusting that the system is going to connect them to God. And when something happens that doesn't seem like that, and they question, they say, is this right? This shouldn't be how it is. They're threatened by wicked people. And when they say, well, let me talk to the person who's making this controlling bad decision, you can't get to them. It's a blank wall. You're stuck. And so 1 Samuel says, these men's sin was great in the Lord's sight. I love that phrase. God sees, oh, they tell you, they're the ones with power, they can do what they like, they will get away with it. No. God sees, he sees them treating his offering with contempt. If God, who made us, who spoke the universe into existence, who, as we've been hearing this morning, a holy, mighty King, who calls mountains to tremble, if he calls us to know him, it is an insult to abuse that invitation for your own gain. And you see, this isn't just God being obsessed with himself. It's not like God is, on the Atkins diet or something. He needs the fatty meat or he won't survive. That's not why this matters. This was an invitation to faithful people to give God the best that they could if they wanted to do that. And these people, they took what God had said, you can freely get to me, and they introduced self-serving and violence and stonewalling. It's contempt for God, and he sees it. Scene 3, it's going to get a bit repetitive. It's the boy in white. Did you see? Verse 18, Samuel is ministering before the Lord. So in the midst of this darkness, there is a little white figure of hope. We get this detail. Samuel was wearing an ephod made by his mum. That is like a robe that a priest should wear. So in the midst of this dark, evil religious system, there in the middle is a little boy, a sign that God is doing something. A figure in white in the middle of this dark evil. And I love this little story of Samuel's family visiting the temple. We know, even if they don't, this temple where you're supposed to meet with God is actually not like that at all. It's a place of abuse. And it's about to get worse as the story goes on. They don't know that. They're coming in innocence to give their offering to God. But these faithful people, they go up and they do receive God's blessing through Eli. Their faithfulness is recognized. I think this is a great lesson that God's grace, his kindness, it does always find ways to get to people who want it. Sometimes the world's depressing, isn't it? Sometimes I feel totally depressed because so many Christians in the world are in institutions that are totally corrupt, that sort of want to line cathedrals with gold leaf and never actually explain to people how to reach God, or in churches where the pastor has a private jet, or where the leader is secretly abusing young people. It's enough to make me despair and fear even standing up here, because I'm like, we don't want to become that. But look, did you see in the passage? Poor, normal, faithful people are seeking God. He finds a way to get grace to them. He finds a way to bless them. I look back at the place that I became a Christian. It was a Christian summer festival. It was not great theologically now I look back. It was a bit emotionally manipulative, to be honest. And some of the things that went on were a little bit, I don't know, bonkers is probably the best word. But I went as a teenager really needing to meet God, and he met me there, and I'm grateful for that. God's very gracious. And maybe someday you'll discover, or you have discovered, the institution in which you met God was corrupt. The leader you trusted was pretending. Don't worry. That doesn't mean you didn't meet God. If you are seeking power and control over other people using religion, God sees you. Be warned. If you're just a normal person wanting to meet God, he'll find a way to bless you, even if the people who are supposed to be helping you don't. Scene 4, arrogance. Eli is the senior priest. He's the father of these corrupt sons, and he warns them. And in his warning, we learn another extremely disturbing detail of this story. These wicked priests were sleeping with women who came to the temple to serve God. That's a polite translation of the word used in Hebrew. That was something that was normal in pagan worship in the countries around Israel, that the priests got to have sex with these temple prostitutes. But it shows this contempt for God, where it began with contempt for God offering, as it so often does, leads to abusing other people. People are made to image, to represent God. God makes every human so valuable. And when we don't think he matters, then we begin to think other people exist for us, and sexual abuse is never far away. A wrong attitude to God always leads to treating people badly. And Eli makes an attempt to warn his young sons, but his sons are like, okay, boomer, and they reject him. They're like, Dad, you're so old-fashioned, still wanting to do this the way the law says. We've got a new, better way that means we get to eat and have sex as much as we like. It's really great. Eli makes a good point. He says, listen, if you harm another person, you can look to God for help to sort that out. But if you deliberately reject the Lord, who's going to be there to heal that relationship? Well, they didn't listen, and here's the chilling part, the surprising verse. It says they didn't listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. That seems like the wrong way around. It seems like it should have said they didn't listen, so it was the Lord's will to put them to death. But here is a highly disturbing view of God. God could have granted them repentance. He could have helped them see what they were doing was wrong. He could have had them turn to him, but on this occasion, he had already decided to put them to death. So they didn't listen. If you are a committed and religious user of other people, if you like knowing things about God so that you can judge other people, if church is a place for you that you use other people, if you're a religious leader using God's precious and holy name to abuse people that Jesus died for, this should terrify you. God will give you over to what you choose. You will be hardened in sin. That's God's judgment, that even when he calls, you won't listen. Sometimes I think we forget. We think of God like a peer. We think he owes us something. God doesn't owe us anything. He sees. He will not overlook. Where you think you're free, but your freedom is used to abuse, to prioritize yourself, here's what God says: you're not even free to make your own decision to come back to God. At the end of the service, we'll sing a song about God's holiness, and this is the type of thing we mean. God is utterly separate to us. We are entirely in his hands. And this story warns every person thinking they can use people weaker than them to do what they want, particularly if they're using a religious covering, but then, oh, I'll say sorry later. God won't be mocked like that. Another novel I was reading a little while ago, a much more famous novel called Brighton Rock by Graham Greene. He was a Roman Catholic writer, and he's very interested in this whole religious sort of religion being used to cover up evil. And Brighton Rock is the story of a gangster, a horrible gangster called Pinky. And basically, Pinky thinks, when I get close to death, I'll quickly say sorry to God, and then it'll be all right. And so he lives his whole life living this horrible gangster lifestyle and thinking, oh, when I'm close to death, I'll just quickly say sorry. And then a moment comes in the book when he is close to death. He's being chased down by someone with a gun or a knife, I can't remember which. But he thinks he's going to die, hiding under the pier, and he gets away. And he reflects on it in the book, and he was like, no, even when I was close to death, I still didn't really want to turn back to God. And that's Graham Greene putting into fiction what is real here. The more you turn from God, you're going to find, particularly if you're using religion to cover up your abuse of other people, you're going to find there's a moment where you can't turn back. I hope that's terrifying to you if you're a user. And I hope it is comforting to you if you've been used. Well, Eli doesn't try that hard. His sons don't change. They all look extremely dark, except scene 5, a repeated scene, is the boy in white. The boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and favour before the Lord. Be encouraged. No matter how bad people get, no matter what terrible things they do in the name of God, no matter how much those in power provoke God's judgment, this boy keeps popping up in the story to say quietly, listen, God will always have a way for people who want to approach him. It might not be impressive, it might look like evil is winning, it might even be places that you trust have let you down. But there is a quiet, weak-looking, humble place where God has a faithful priest for you. Scene 6, judgment and replacement. This situation can't go on forever. A man of God, a prophet appears. We don't even know his name, but as always when God's word speaks, it disrupts and brings clarity to everything. And he rehearses the whole story, this prophet, of the nation and Eli's family. He reminds them, you were once slaves and you weren't allowed to worship God at all. And you were taken out and freed to know God. And your family, Eli, were given this immense, amazing privilege of both knowing God and passing that knowledge on to other people. And I said I would look after you. That wasn't going to be any sacrifice to you. You'd work in the temple and you would be fed. And Eli has tried to tell off his sons, but in the end, God says, Eli, you thought it was more important to honour your family than to honour God. You could see taking what people bring to give to God and using for yourself and scorning God himself. But you thought, well, I don't want the conflict with my sons. We get the history because it's always start to ask this. I find this a very useful question in my own life when people are getting on my nerves, as they occasionally do. When I'm tempted to treat people badly, have a little think about how does the way I'm treating people compare with the way God has treated me? It's a good and stark question. It throws into relief when we're really getting it wrong. And so God says to Eli, therefore the deal we had, that you would honour me, that privilege is passed on through your family so you could be my priests, that deal is off. I love the way God says it. Far be it from me. Far be it from God to see people abusing other people and still say, okay, well that can have my name on it. No way. There's a lesson there for people. This often happens actually, I'm afraid to say, when some terrible abuse is discovered in a Christian environment, people think, well, we better not make it public because it will make God look bad. God doesn't accept that as anything to do with it. Eli's family will die young forever. I mean, it sounds terrifying to us. It may seem unfair or wrong, but you see what's going on? This family have been given a chance to deal with the evil. They've not done it and they persisted in it. And God was like, this is a family problem. I'm not going to let you all live to old age and keep repeating this problem again and again and again. People are suffering because of that, and I'm going to limit what you're able to do. If you think of yourself as a quiet observer of all of this, it might seem very harsh. If you've been a victim of serious religious abuse, you might well wish God had done this before someone got to you. And instead of this family, God says, he is going to appoint a priest, a permanent priest. This family of failed priests will come back to that person wanting their rule back, but it will be too late. Well, there was a better priest in Israel. He still didn't last forever. He was a guy called Zadok. He was appointed to be a priest instead of Eli's family, and he did a much better job. But I wonder, do you remember a few weeks ago, we were celebrating Jesus' resurrection from the dead. And one of the things we celebrated, that Jesus is alive and he lives forever, that the New Testament talks about, it says, because he lives forever, he can and be and is a permanent, perfect priest. Unlike any of these ones, he can save us completely. And that's the fulfillment of this prophecy to Eli, which brings us to the last scene. It's predictable. Chapter 3, verse 1. The boy in white. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. If evil is unfolding around you and to you, God is providing an alternative. It's someone to go to who might look weak, a small figure of light in the midst of a very dark temple. That's often how it feels. What we are doing here, introducing Jesus to each other, it feels very small and very weak to be simply offering each other Jesus in the darkness of the world. It seems not much in the face of the grinding evil systems that we live in. But listen, God is here. He's faithfully working. He's saying, come to him through Jesus, no matter what mess he is having to judge in the world around you. There is always hope. And that's true. I meet people all the time who are finding that religious systems which were set up to help people actually from the top control and crush people. But we find freedom from that when we actually meet Jesus. He looks small, he looks impressive, unimpressive, like little Samuel in the temple. But God is bringing true knowledge of him through Jesus. 3 things to say for us as I'm finished. 3 words to take with you. Stop, priests, trust. Stop. Someone was telling me a story recently about a friend of theirs who isn't a Christian, who dated a Christian for a while. Whole set of issues there. And the Christian they dated treated them very badly, the non-Christian, and then said to the non-Christian, oh sorry, I'm going to have to end this relationship because you're tempting me to be a bad person. And I'm a Christian, I need to be a good person, so I'm going to have to stop it. Can you see the wickedness of that? This person isn't a Christian. They have one person in their lives who should have led her to God, to the grace of Jesus. And instead, what does that person do? He sins against her and then blames her. Pushes her away from God. He uses what God has given to bring people to him for himself, for his own benefit, and damages her. If that is you, stop. I fear some of us could be doing that. We are the person that someone knows who could show them God. And we are treating that person badly because we want something for ourselves. We are thinking, they hurt me, so they only know us as angry. We got into a sinful pattern relationship with them and we blame them. Maybe even it's your whole attitude to the church community. God gives us this amazing community to help us get to know him. But people come and they're part of it because it might do something for me. Doesn't really bother me if people here really come to know God. Or maybe you're leading something in the church and you're secretly using that position for yourself in a way that hurts other people. Listen, please can I say, stop. God will not be mocked. The contempt for other people you're showing is contempt for God. And if you're living that way and you hear this and you're still thinking, oh yeah, it doesn't matter very much, I'm sure I'll get away with it. Can you see from this passage, that is God already judging you. So humble yourself and turn back to him. Stop. Second word, priests. We have no priests except Jesus. Any religious system that sets someone up between you and God and says you need to go through them to get to God, you should be suspicious of that. You don't need to come to church to meet with God. You should come to church. God commands it. It's good to do the commands that God says. But not because you need me or anyone else to bring you to God. It's above our pay grade. Only Jesus has that job. That's very negative. But in any situation, it could be someone using the word priest. It could easily be someone not using that word, but setting themselves up as the way you will receive God's blessing through them. Get out of there. It's a negative way to say it. Here's a positive thing, though. We do have a perfect priest. Here's some words from the book of Hebrews, talking about this Old Testament thing. It says, there have been many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office. So they kept having a priest, kept dying, and kept having a new one. They had loads. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, this is the best bit. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him. Why? Because he always lives to intercede for them, to bring them to God. You don't need anyone around you, a special, brilliant person to get you to God. Because you have the perfect person who lives forever, always standing before God, wanting to bring you to God. Third thing, trust. In this picture of darkness, we keep getting the hope of the small boy, gifted by God, the hope of this nation, Israel. In a moment, we are going to come to the communion table. And what we actually give and receive, it's not much. A small piece of gluten-free, slightly tasteless bread, and some grape juice. In itself, not much that's impressive. But this table is the point of light in a dark world. Because this table says, whatever bad stuff is going on, whatever terrible things that God is going to have to judge or is judging at the moment, however that is crushing and demeaning and taking life away from people, Jesus' body and blood and his living for us means we can come to God without anyone else's help. For various reasons, this is the last sermon I'm going to be preaching at Christ Church for a while. And so I do want to take the opportunity to say this. If you sit here each week because you like coming, because you enjoy the singing, or the fellowship, or the friendship, or something that we're doing, we're really glad you're here. But now, as we have been exposed today to the utter holiness of God, the free access to his grace we get through Jesus, now may be a day to move beyond just sitting here to doing business with God yourself. And I'm going to say in a minute, anyone who knows the Lord Jesus can come to the table. And I'm also going to say, if you're not a Christian, please don't come to the table. Please just observe and use the time to think. But you could at this moment come to Jesus and then come to the table. We do all need a priest. But Jesus is the priest that we need. If you have not come to him, now would be a great moment to realize what God is like and realize you need his help.